to sit.
Is Uriel Simonsohn, please. 15 דקות, 15 minutes.
Yes, just a minute. אני אמזוג לך.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for being late. Teaching obligations, and I'm out of respect for your guests, our guests. I'm going to conform to the German culture, academic culture, and read out my paper.
Yeah. So for Uri Iftach, I could understand it. It has strong German connections. What's your justification? You do have
Simonsohn.
Yeah, but they go back in time, no?
Yes.
Yeah. You studied in Princeton, if I am correct, or?
Yes,
So,
but
which
I
is not
kept my
yeah.
loyalty. Okay, and another introductory comment. I am not a legalist at all. I actually know very little about law. I'm a social historian. So the perspective that you're going to receive right now is of a social historian. Professor Jill Harris, an historian of the later Roman Empire, specifically of Roman legal culture and society, issues the following warning in her book, Law and Empire in Late Antiquity. And I quote, "Historians who use law must be aware of and respect the separateness of law as a discipline. To treat laws as just another literary or documentary source without considering how law as text came into being is to risk misunderstanding the texts themselves and drawing from them highly questionable historical conclusions." Unquote. Throughout her book, Harris convincingly demonstrates the moral dimension of Roman law in response to the social morass of its time and the heavy dependency of certain laws on social attitudes. I believe that the two excellent discussions we've just heard provide further confirmation of the strong interplay between law and society that underpin Harris's arguments and methodology. They illustrate how legal principles and institutions were adapted, modified, and carried in the context of changing social circumstances. In particular, they allow us to value the historical drama that had resulted from an ongoing tension between legally pluralist settings and the agendas of elites of diverse types. The adoption of the commenda in different legal systems and the favorable position Hanseatic merchants enjoyed before foreign courts were both the outcome of the legal, specifically judicial possibilities to which individuals could make recourse. Whereas the former appears to have been initiated in an attempt to keep legal consumers within the fold of a legal system, the latter can be seen from the side of consumers as they sought to manipulate legal systems to their own advantage. As a social historian, my point of departure is that legal developments are in fact the surface of exciting and profound social dynamics. In my brief response, I wish to make a point about law as an informant of social history and, if time allows, provide some illustration from the terrain of my own historiographic preoccupations. My point is that historiographically, laws tell history. While legal sources have been utilized by historians of different periods and geographic domains, the methodological question of whether law can tell history has remained a perplexing issue. The premise underlying the use of legal sources by social historians is that laws and legal institutions are far from autonomous entities and should be seen as mirrors of social morass, dynamics, and structures. Social historians are not interested in the history of law per se, but rather in its social role. And while laws are designed to serve the social agendas of their issuers, sustain the orderly function of social institutions, and implement ideologies of various sorts, they also necessarily address and thus reflect the exigencies of the moment. As such, they attend to numerous aspects of society, including political power, economy, class, race, gender, family, and so forth. The contents of law can tell us more than the outline of a given society and its various components. Differences in the laws of various societies attest to the different legal cultures in which legal principles incubate and to the values and norms that govern those societies. Legal principles and stipulations are not direct informants, however, and need to be handled with care by historians, that is, to be viewed within a broader context and in conjunction with additional forms of evidence, rather than providing the basis for investigation by the power of their contents alone. The premise of this methodological approach is that law should be regarded as an arena of conflict in which a variety of lay people and professionals contest its construction and use. So understood, law provides an analytical framework that stands to contribute to our understanding of social historical phenomena as a map or an outline of social tensions, both within communities and between them, and of the different social forces at play. For historians in general, and those concerned with societies in particular, these observations are fundamental. Historians of ancient and late antique societies have remarked the intimate interaction between laws and societies in what Ralph Matheson has depicted as a complex dance of interdependence, or in the process typified by Jill Harris as a form of hybrid creation. Both characterizations serve to underscore the mutual development of laws and societies, whereas social changes, such as new kinds of authority, modes of governance, social membership, and allegiance dictate legal developments, the latter, seen, for example, in the enactment of religious laws by temporal powers, form the background to new conceptions of communal organization. Thus, while the legislative responses of late Roman emperors to social pressures have been observed as heavily dependent on social attitudes, the absorption of Roman law in episcopal courts was essential for ecclesiastical civic aspirations. In both realms of empire and church, a unified legal system was central for attaining and sustaining authority by means of legal conformity. Or, as Clifford Ando has put it, a political collectivity, a populace, is formed through the consensual commitment of its members to a particular normative order. Ando's observation regarding the utility of Roman law as a glue that binds community should be carried on to Humphreys's examination of a lex Christiana contained in the Gospels. Accordingly, the latter not only served as guides of Christian way of life, but as a moral code which was to be shared by a Christian collectivity. For the purpose of illustration, the case of the East Syrian Church, centered in late antique Iran, serves as a case in point. While an overlap between church and society was already introduced by early generations of bishops under Roman government, it was life under non-Christian rule, first Sasanian and later Islamic, that was to expand the scope of ecclesiastical involvement in mundane affairs. The most immediate expression of ecclesiastical investment in worldly affairs of Christian believers was its treatment of law, an institution that played a decisive role in every respect of both sacred and temporal life. Under non-Christian rule, the Sasanian and later its Islamic successor, the incorporation of civil law in East Syrian ecclesiastical legislation and its expansion into full-fledged legal treatises to an extent that can be described as a legal reform is a development that should be understood as part of a growing ecclesiastical struggle to affirm communal boundaries in the context of life under non-Christian rule. The process was gradual, initiated by an ecclesiastical leadership that was little by little coming into terms with its autonomous standing and attending to a notable feature of social integration that often overrode religious differences. One aspect of East Syrian ecclesiastical agenda was a growing effort to counter the appeal of non-Christian legal solutions to civil problems hitherto unaddressed in ecclesiastical law. In contrast to the ecclesiastical leadership operating under late Roman governance, those within Sasanian and Islamic domains sought to hinder local Christians from resorting to civil solutions of non-Christian legal provenance unless these solutions received an ecclesiastical coating. Thus, whereas Christians were called upon to refrain from appealing to non-ecclesiastical courts, ecclesiastical judges could be found relying on ecclesiastical legal codes that were founded on principles of Zoroastrian and later Islamic origins. Yet it was not only legal competition in the context of religious separation that propelled the regulation of civil affairs among lay members of the churches. At stake was also the interest of instilling a greater notion of a Christian communal identity. By regulating matters of normative conduct among their laity and enjoining their uncompromised obedience to ecclesiastical laws, ecclesiastical leaders were drawing the line between accepted and unaccepted norms of Christian social life. Thank you.